First of all, we would like to welcome our panelists. We would like to thank the International Hrant Foundation for the festival. We're going to have a wonderful two-day festival, I'm sure, and I'm very happy to be able to be a part of this. Well, I'll start with a difficult question, because we will talk about the near future of civil society, but before that, maybe it would be good to first give a definition of civil society, thinking that this concept has a history of 2,000 years in the world. And in Turkey, we can go back to 40 years, and some people say it has a history of 200 years in Turkey, including the Pius Foundation. So I would like to ask our speakers, how do you define the civil society in Turkey? Olcay, maybe we can start with you. Hello, you said 2,000 years. Well, an ambitious figure. I was surprised to see that first, but we can say that, yes, it's a difficult definition that can change based on the political and social context, but I prefer defining civil society as an umbrella, let's say, of different civil society organizations. That includes the different associations, foundations, religious communities. So anyone apart from the state, the government, and family can be considered as the civil society. And I think it's an ecosystem whereby the individuals have the right to choose how they will be organized. They can be, for instance, providing support, they can be moderating, they can be like facilitators, arbitrators, and individuals can become either active or passive members of the civil society by making their choices. But for Turkey specifically, I think civil society has a history of 40 years only, because it's an important milestone after the 1980s and the coup d'etat in terms of human rights and the construction of human rights organization started right after the coup, and Human Rights Association, that was actually a turning point or a milestone for the civil society movement in Turkey. So, of course, the definition of civil society should also include change and transformation. So we have to mention the 1999 earthquake in Turkey. People understood the importance of civil society movement for humanitarian aid to be provided. So civil society organizations provided the humanitarian aid just like a government in that time. And then in the beginning of 2000s, we had the EU accession process, which also made a great contribution to the change and transformation of civil society in Turkey. That was a difficult definition, but I have to say that in terms of building human rights and for the human rights movement in Turkey, the civil society is very important. It makes great contribution to change and transformation. So as I said, I think the history starts with the coup d'etat of 1980, and the relatives of inmates started this movement together with the establishment of Human Rights Association in Turkey. So that's how I can make my definition. Okay. I define the civil society as follows: individuals coming together to fulfill a purpose, independent of politics. It's about individuals working together to make progress towards that purpose or goal. This is how I would like to define civil society. Yes, that's my definition. Very brief and to the point. Thank you. I will not be as brief as Mr. Ibrahim. So, okay, hello everyone, how are you? It's a great pleasure for me to be with you. First of all, I would like to apologize for my Turkish. My Turkish is a little bit broken, so I would like to wish success to the interpreters. So, I believe that actually civil society is a space. It's a space where we as people, citizens, are discovering a responsibility, and we're discovering our rights and our power. And in civil society, we understand that there are certain things that are more important than ourselves. That's where we start to understand and feel the problems of the society. So it's a space, but it's also an instrument. Just like Mr. Ibrahim said, it's an instrument for getting organized, for getting together, to raise our voices, and to create solutions in a way, and to help the decision makers or powers that are shaping us, like the media, business world, etc., to make a call to them and to hold them accountable. Second thing, I don't know the word in Turkish, but we say connected tissue in English. So it's a connected tissue for all our activities. For instance, LGBT rights, hate speech, violence against women. These things don't know any borders. These are global issues. These are problems of the entire world, not only our problems. So you can connect to other people from other countries through these issues. So, as I said, it's a connected tissue. And then civil society is also an important power for decision makers. We can say that they're not people who like taking risks, but we have to push them. We have to guide them. We have to show them a certain direction. So looking at the history of the world, from environment to human rights, it's all the developments are taking place because the civil society is strong, powerful, and making pressure. That's how the society changes. It's a Japanese glue. We say Japanese glue. So civil society is also like the Japanese glue. Why? Because when we talk about democracy and human rights, we can say that they are very vulnerable things. We see all around the world that there's a regression in democracy and human rights, and I'm not talking about Turkey only. Globally speaking, this is happening. So whenever these things happen, we will have to feed from democracy, human rights, try to keep and strengthen them furthermore. That's how I see it. Well, are we perfect in Turkey? No. But that should be the goal. We should try to work hard so that we will have at least a perfect situation, and we have made great progress, and we will continue to work, hopefully. I would like to thank all the three speakers. Yes, this was a difficult question, but you were able to answer it very clearly, briefly. My takeaway from here is that looking at the civil society in Turkey, maybe it's more proactive. As I said, the civil society at large has a history of 2,000 years. Some philosophers have written things about it. And in my mind, I was actually associating the definition with the foundation of the United States of America. And Tocqueville's approach is important, trying to influence the decision makers, defending human rights and democracy, individuals coming together to create the conditions they want to live in, taking proactive action. These are all the things that fall into the definition. So I can say that the definition of civil society is more like an active one, starting from the 1990s, like Olcay said, especially for Turkey. That's how it started, as I understand. So now, another question that I think is difficult, but I'm sure Olcay will again be giving a very clear, crystal clear answer. So, NGOs or CSOs working in the field of rights-based advocacy, what do you think of the work done in Turkey? Maybe you can talk about the work you carry out at Hafıza Merkezi, Memory Center, and what are the possible barriers and obstacles that CSOs like Hafıza Merkezi can encounter, and what are the advantages that they can have? Yes, Hafıza Merkezi, Memory Center, and many other rights-based organizations presented here, I don't think they have the difficulty of talking about these things, but we are very lucky as our center because we launched a report called Speak Up very recently, and we discussed exactly the issues you mentioned. Rights-based organizations at the moment are actually facing a lot of barriers, administrative and judicial harassment, so to speak. We know with laws and inspections, all the rights-based organizations are now facing this huge bureaucracy that is further supported by laws and legislation. For instance, the Prevention of Weapons of Mass Destruction law really had a great impact on civil society organizations, bringing along a lot of uncertainties and indicating that very soon all this harassment on CSOs will continue. So the administrative harassment and the inspections brought along with them, of course, make things difficult for us and prevent us from focusing on our real work. And it's also very damaging because we can never get a concrete result out of those inspections or audits that we are going through. We can't find any room for progress, and for such CSOs, for women's NGOs, CSOs, or LGBTI CSOs, it's used as a tool of labeling the associations, and we always face this problem of being labeled, especially the anti-terror law is being used in a very arbitrary manner. Everyone is labeled as either a terrorist organization or a supporter of a terrorist organization, if not a member. So I can't stop talking, by the way. So many obstacles come to my mind, as you see, so many barriers we have. We keep talking, and we have to talk about these things, of course. But then I think there is a very valuable advantage that we have created. For instance, solidarity networks. These increasing solidarity networks are there. The way we try to learn about each other's activities. We have to learn actually all these things, and I think the civil society organizations are able to mobilize very fast nowadays. So we face so many problems and obstacles every week almost that we are now very open to learn from one another and to have solidarity with one another. So I think that will be an advantage that will be created permanently as a result of these challenging times for the civil society. Yes, I was very right. Again, you answered very clearly a very difficult question again. So, Mr. Ibrahim, I'll have a more technical question for you because of your experience. Because when we say the civil society in Turkey, you are the leading name. You are a doyen of the civil society in Turkey, and you have played a role in the construction of many civil society organizations. You were a member of their administration. And how has the civil society changed since you started? And in this period of pandemic and democratic regression, what kind of organizational models are we going to see in the civil society? Well, civil society organizations are still toddlers in Turkey. They still haven't been able to walk properly. So for over 20 years, I have been in the civil society. And in the civil society organizations that I'm involved in, I see effective work, but I think this is just a minority. Making generalizations about the civil society, saying that the civil society has developed a lot, is not possible. No, on the contrary, it has regressed. It's shrinking. Just to give you an example, 3-4 years ago in Turkey, we had 126,000 associations. Currently, we have 122,000 associations. So 4,000 associations closed down. So we also have 5,000 foundations. So in total, we have 127,000 civil society organizations for a country of 84 million people. Let's look at France. In France, they have a population of 67 million people and they have 200,000 CSOs. In Sweden, they have a population of 10 million people and they have more than 190,000 CSOs. So Turkey is really toddling. It's a toddler and it's not able to further develop itself in this field because we still have this mentality that everything has to be done by the government, by the state. And then there is the state oppression, not allowing for civil society organizations to flourish. And if you actually play an active role, maybe you may be sanctioned by the government. So civil society organizations shouldn't be political organizations. They can come together, get organized, and maybe make recommendations to the politicians, but they shouldn't be involved in political work. They need to be transparent, and transparency, unfortunately, in Turkey, when it comes to civil society organizations, is something that we are really lacking. And civil society organizations are not able to develop transparency for some reason. And on the other hand, the society is in need of getting organized. That's why we have these informal organizations that creates mistrust in the society. For instance, parents tell their children who will attend university to refrain from becoming a member of any association. So that's why, for all these reasons, we haven't been able to really develop the civil society. It's our mistake, the mistake of my generation. But hopefully in the upcoming period, the young people will be able to do this, because in countries or societies whereby the civil society is not developed, democracy cannot be developed. It's not possible for democracy to flourish in countries or communities where there is no strong civil society. So if you want democracy to be strong, first you need to support the civil society. Before you ask me a new question, can I also say something? Yes, I was going to ask you a follow-up question. Yes, what Mr. Ibrahim has said is very right, very correct. But on the other hand, as the Sivil Düşün experience, I will share my thoughts. And Cengiz is here, maybe he agrees with me. These are very difficult, challenging periods. Things are getting worse. We have the COVID issue, but there's still this incredible amount of energy. Huge, huge energy. More than 3,000 proposals we received. People came and applied to us from everywhere. And very interestingly, 70% of them were applying to Sivil Düşün for the first time ever. Maybe we had a very good marketing, I don't know, at Sivil Düşün. But I believe that there is also this new energy that is out there because people, activists, leaders, members of civil society organizations came to realize now that the government cannot do everything. This mentality is now on the rise, I think. They're understanding that it can't be done by the government alone. So when I came to Turkey 20 years ago, I saw a very different culture. And as a civil society, we are really very poor people, they would think. That was the mood or way of thinking. But now they don't feel like that anymore. They don't feel like losers. People here in the civil society now know their rights. They want to create a change. That's the mentality. That's the culture that I observe now. Of course, we have stressful things, challenges that cause us to be depressed. Sometimes you don't even want to get out of your bed in the morning, but you do in the end. You do get out of your bed. And that's incredibly nice, and we shouldn't forget this. That's something to remember. We still have a long way to go, and I get a different mood now. So maybe, Mr. Ibrahim, I'll say this to you so that you'll be happy. Well, you partially answered my question, because my question would be the following. You work with an institution that gives funds and grants, and in your past experience you have this also. You worked with grants and you gave grants, so I was going to ask you to make a projection on the future of civil society based on the applications you receive. What do you mean, about the funds, or? Okay, let me ask it this way. I'll ask you the future of funds, the grants, and the second question. As you said, you received many different projects, and 70% of them applied to Sivil Düşün for the first time ever. Yes, and 30% activists, I have to say. Okay, can you talk about the profile of the applicants? What kind of applications do you receive, and do you think that this trend will go on in the future? Do you have any forecasts for the future in terms of the profile of the civil society? Yes, I have to ask Alexandra, the future of funds. Are we going to receive the funds or not? Let's ask Alexandra. Hopefully, inshallah, as we say, hopefully we will receive the funds. Well, we have to accept this. If the European Union weren't there, the civil society wouldn't be in the current position that it is today. That's a reality. We have to admit that. Because the funds created by the EU keeps us alive at the moment, help us survive. And secondly, they pave the way for us. They inspire us. And also they show solidarity with us. That's a fact. And that's very nice. However, this is not endless. This is not forever. One day, in Turkey, if we succeed in the field of human rights, if we have better or stronger human rights and a better democracy, then the EU will not be giving or allocating these funds. Then what are we going to do? So we are not ready or prepared for that future. Maybe in 3-5 years, or maybe it will take 10 years, I don't know, we don't know, but we have to get prepared for that. You're asking me the profile of the civil society organizations applying to us. We are receiving applications from all fields of human rights. We have wonderful projects, not so wonderful projects sometimes, but they're all important. And I have to say that we cannot, of course, support everyone, only 30%. There is a huge demand. Are they all very good projects? No, they need to be better. But we have the funds available now until 2025, as far as I know. It will be there. But for the future, maybe we have to start thinking about it. Yes, we have this huge amount of funds and resources for us, and you talked about different examples, for instance, EU or US, in terms of number of civil society organizations. You gave examples from other countries. Looking at those countries, 80% of their funds are coming from individuals, donations. Not only rich people, by the way. It's not only the rich people donating. You, me, we are supporting each other. Imagine like that. So there is this huge amount of funds available. I know in these economic conditions it's not possible, and maybe tomorrow it won't be possible either, but we started certain initiatives. We are now making initiatives about this. We have the Needs Map initiative, for instance, Patreon. There are certain things. some action that has started, good indications, good signs. I think those platforms or initiatives will have some experience and we will learn from them. But we have to start transforming ourselves. What do we need to do to create the funds? We have to think about this. What do we need to do for fundraising? First, we will defend our rights. We will exhibit the bad examples, but we also have to come up with solutions. We have to support people for solutions, right? People support or donate to civil society organizations if they trust them. I agree with you, Mr. Ibrahim. We need to be more transparent. We need to strengthen our accountability. And the surveys, the polls also indicate this. There is a problem in the civil society, and we know the reason why this problem is there. The word itself, being organized, is perceived as a bad word in Turkish language. We didn't create this, but it's a fact. We have to live it. That's why we need to further strengthen our relation with the people, and we need to build this trust. And the third thing is that we need to change our mentality or perspective, and we need to create communities, not organizations, but communities. What do I mean by this? You always are asked these questions, right? Who are your target audience? Who are your stakeholders? These are the classic questions, right? But it's always like we imagine ourselves to be here and the others are over there. No, but we are all in the same community, in the same society. Communities love each other, strengthen one another, support each other. So we need to start creating communities, not organizations. So that will need a shift in our mentalities. And this new perspective will also bring together new strategies and tactics. But I understand it's very difficult to do this now. However, we have to start thinking about these things, and we need to take new action, new steps. The EU, when the EU starts reducing the funds, we would be more prepared for that future. That's what I believe.
Thank you very much, Dilek. Your response about the resources and community building, they are both very valuable. As I was listening to the opening remarks, Ayşe also mentioned the importance of that. So we're talking about solidarity, and we can actually think of them as cooperation. So let me ask you another question to all of you. Do you believe that there is enough level of cooperation among civil society organizations? If not, what are the reasons for that? In each society, of course, there should be a healthy level of competitiveness in civil society, as much as cooperation. But as far as I see, we don't have unhealthy competitiveness, and we see some compartmentalizations. This is, of course, partly due to the limited resources. So let me ask this to you. Do you believe that we have sufficient level of cooperation among civil society organizations in Turkey? I cannot really say that it is sufficient, or I cannot really fix a bar of sufficiency. But this cooperation does not necessarily mean having a contract or protocol of collaboration. They can only be aware of one another's activities. For instance, there is the Human Rights Defenders Solidarity Network, and we are a party to this network, and being a network brings along solidarity. So I'm not in a position to make any comparison because we don't have any data. I don't have any data at hand about this, and I don't feel comfortable about talking about this. But For instance, we had the support to rights grant scheme, and there are other grant schemes, re-granting or sub-granting, and I believe that there is an increase in this kind of schemes, and I had a feeling that we are now more aware about one another's activities. We take part even more in one another's activities, and now we stand here together with the Hrant Dink Foundation. I think we are not in a bad shape, I would say. I think we have a good standing, but of course there is always room for improvement. I don't believe that there is a sufficient level of cooperation among civil society organizations. And the reason why, in my opinion, is the fact that civil society organizations are not transparent and they are not accountable. I very much wish this would not be the case. For instance, I'm involved in many CSOs, and in those organizations we have some set of rules. However, when we look out there, there are many CSOs active in various fields, but if they are not transparent, I would not like to engage in cooperation with them. What do I mean by transparency? When we visit the websites of CSOs, are we able to see their financial statements or auditors' reports? When I cannot see them, I wouldn't feel like collaborating with those CSOs, and I cannot see these auditors' reports or financial statements in many of them. And we started an association called Açık Açık only for that purpose, to promote transparency. And we have about 120, 130 member CSOs. I was giving you some figures earlier on. If we have 123,000 associations in Turkey, and if we have more than 5,000 foundations in Turkey, 38% of them are professional organizations. So we can even debate whether or not they would qualify as a CSO. 23% are sports organizations, 18% are religious organizations or providing religious services. So this being the case, I would like to once again underline the importance of true civil society. The organizations involved in rights advocacy only make up 1.5% of all 123,000 associations. And for instance, organizations working on environment and nature only make up 2.5%. And earlier on, I gave you the wrong figures. In France, we have 1.5 million CSOs. I wrongfully said 200,000. However, it is indeed 1.5 million. And also, when you look into the figures of associations, you see the total number as 325,000 associations in total. However, when you see the breakdown, you would notice that out of this, 207,000 of them are already closed or dissolved. So it's a great majority of the statistics include dissolved associations. That's the reason why we need transparency. It would give confidence both to other civil society organizations, but to the public at large and other stakeholders. Thank you very much, Dilek. This time I have to fully agree with Ibrahim Bey. I have to say on these 2 points. One is, of course, the question of transparency, something I mentioned earlier on. If we are to work on an EU project application or a grant application from another country or philanthropist, so whenever we file an application, we should offer this confidence to them, and ensuring transparency is one of the ways of doing so. And I agree. We are starting to collaborate more with one another, but there is a question that we need to answer. I don't know how to say. Maybe it's not rivalry as such, but we are excluding one another. CSOs working in the very same field may exclude one another. To the contrary, we should be working even more effectively. And let's say here is my dream. Let's say I'm working for a women's organization. I would bring them together, all together, so that we can collaborate. And every organization would contribute with their strongest aspect. I mean, one may be the strongest in terms of communication, the other maybe in terms of advocacy, or the other maybe in terms of financial management. So everyone, every CSO almost do the very same thing. But if we can be more efficient, if we can diversify our financial resources, then we can make a difference. Then we can come up with a solution. And then people will have more confidence in us. They will trust us more. And if we are more transparent, then they will start to support us. So collaboration is not only important for solidarity, and it doesn't only come by working together, but we really need to work more efficient and effectively and more transparently. Thank you, Dilek. I have one final question as a moderator, then I will turn to our audience for their questions. Now that we talk about the future, about the next generation, let us talk about young people. Next generation. So I will ask this question to all of you, but maybe you can respond from the context of your field. So Olcay, what about young professionals? What would you say about their interest in those areas? Do you foresee loss of interest in the field due to the impending restrictions, or would they somehow be more encouraged to get involved or apply to those programs? What is your take on this? Well, I would like to talk about the interest of young people for sure, but I also believe that as CSOs we should have a serious thinking about young people, because we are awaiting a general election and 6 million young people will be casting their votes. So they have a very big say on what awaits us, and we should be both expressing ourselves, but we should also be more open to work together with young people. We should be more open to listen to them and work together. As a rights-based organization, by the way, I have just talked about the obstacles. Ibrahim Bey has also mentioned that every time you hear the word CSO or organization, there is a misperception, both on the part of young people and their families or parents too. There is this hesitation or fear. On the other hand, we receive a lot of applications from young people, both for our vacancies and also for our project activities. Of course, this is great news. First thing is that we have youth unemployment, and I believe that youth unemployment is also triggering that. But on the other hand, young people having interest in civil society or civic space, I want to read or interpret this as an indication of their will or their vision for the future. So I believe that CSOs should be also working on this intergenerational linkages and to transform and strengthen these linkages. And I already observe this happening. I'm very optimistic of young people. For more than 20 years, the community foundations, the community volunteers foundations of Turkey Talk have been working with young people. They give responsibilities to young people. So, in order to empower young people, you should not impose projects on them. You should listen to them. You should listen to what they have to say, their ideas, and then you should give them responsibilities. If you give them responsibility for their own ideas, then you also ensure their participation. And then they take giant steps towards breaking their stereotypes or prejudices. So we have observed this, how it empowers young people, also local people, local authorities, and even at higher level, prime minister or the president. We have experienced this in the past. They call us, our foundation, to learn about our activities. So, Talk, Community Volunteers Foundation, has been very active, and the more I listen to the young people that we have been working with, the more I become optimistic. So we should listen to young people, we should give them responsibility, and if we achieve that, this will be a great contribution to our society altogether. And secondly, one of our fundamental principles is live together in diversity. And now that we are in the Festival of Coexistence, I would like to highlight it even more. Since our very foundation, we did not make any discrimination or distinction based on religion, ethnicity, or gender. So we have always welcomed any young people of any walks of life, and this was also a very important element for young people to break their taboos, to see that it is possible to be hand in hand with young people from other groups. So once you have these rules as ground rules or main principles, I think we can achieve even more. I have to agree. Yes, I agree. I also remember how it was to be a young person. It was really nice. I have seen and observed many generations, and every time something different happens, every time they do something shocking, because every time the new generation comes up, they see things that we don't really see, and they open our eyes and minds, and they have a totally different style, and this is how they bring about change. But of course, we have our legacy too, and young people build on their new actions upon that, upon our legacy. So this is also important. And here is what I see as a CSO person of the past. There is this word that I really like, agile. So they can be more rapidly adapting themselves to the environment. They can be quicker in organizing themselves. So this is superb, I would say. Yes, on the one hand, we're talking about getting organized, and our wish is to see more forms of getting organized. And I can understand this. This is not exactly the type that we would like to see, but they get organized through WhatsApp or social messaging, and we need to better understand the dynamics in order to direct it for the common good or for the social good. But yes, there may be some informal ways of doing this, but we need to be very well aware of the new dynamics now, and they are highly creative. They make use of arts, music, comics, and comedy. And this is also very nice. And they are very direct, very much to the point. I mean, we elaborate on theoretical conceptions, we try to walk around the topic, but they are very to the point, very direct, and very genuine, very sincere, if I may say so. I mean, the older generation of CSO activists or people, sometimes we talk from high up, and on the other hand, the younger generation is more sincere. So their agile way of doing things or their sincere way of doing things also transform us, and I think it will only take us to a better place. And here is what I also want to say to young people. Some CSO executives or directors, it's time for them or it's time for us. We need to ask for our retirement. We need to leave our seats to next generation. I know you are not occupying a seat, but I'm now occupying a seat for another 3 years. But after that, I should be simply leave the scene. Thank you. We have 10 more minutes. Let me turn to our audience for their questions and comments. Unfortunately, the interpreters cannot hear the audience speaking. We cannot hear the audience, therefore we cannot interpret. Apologies for that. Interpreters cannot hear. Based on our perceptions as of today, maybe young people are not forming a CSO. We will try to interpret to the extent we hear. We apologize for that. So we have to also remember what happened in the 1980s. At that time, young people were organizing in masses, and this is some sort of an injustice to them. I fully agree with Ibrahim Bey, but we need to also mention women's organizations, women's movement, the transformation that they led. I think it is at least as important as that of young people. What is your take on this? I couldn't really understand your comment. I mean, are we now separating young people and women? I mean, young people include men and women all together, so I don't make such a distinction personally. Of course, women are very important, and young people are very important too. I mean, in our community, most of our volunteers are young women. We also have young men, but most of them are young women. I think the biggest problem in Turkey is the fact that the group that we call adults, they do not give any importance to young people. I mean, we have mostly people over 55 years of age. Most of them are men. They are the ones that rule this country. I mean, they don't give responsibility to young people. So I don't mean to make any discrimination. I don't want to take much of your time.
Yes, as my Turkish is not very good, maybe I misexpress myself. But yes, women's organizations are also doing wonderful things. But I'm trying to say that the problem is so big that to make progress, and as we have very limited resources and funds at the moment, maybe such a collaboration, a stronger cooperation would be better. And that's just an idea. I just shared with you. Maybe it's not true, but CSOs working in the same field, if we can come together, if like Ahmet is better in his field of activity, for instance, advocacy at the parliament, they're doing it better, for instance, then it should be your responsibility, we can say to him. Or if another person, Mehmet, let's say, if they are stronger in the digital field, then they should work in that field. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry if I did any injustice to anyone, but I didn't want to say it. But I was just trying to say that the problem is so huge and it's not getting any smaller, and we have such limited resources. That's why we need to consider collaborations accordingly. I also would like to say something about doing injustice, because yes, you are very right, in specific fields, women's organizations, minority organizations, yes, they have been there since the establishment of the Republic, but in terms of the role of civil society, in terms of building human rights, I try to talk about the transformation in my definition. I made my definition based on the 1980s, the coup d'etat. Of course, you are very right. Of course, all these organizations are included in that wide umbrella of organizations. Thank you for reminding us that again. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Association for Audio Impaired Individuals. I am also an audio impaired person. By the way, I would like to say that I carried out projects. We got some funds from the EU. We tried to see the funds from the Ministry of Youth and Sports. We sent our project applications to them, and they said, first put in the password and learn the result. So I was suspicious about transparency. No one knew what kind of associations received what kind of project grants. So I never sent my application to them. So you're very right. Transparency and trust are very much correlated with one another. And I was just thinking, the funds of the government funds, ministry funds are there with our taxes, right? We pay taxes, those taxes accumulate, and the funds are established. But I've never seen anyone criticizing why these funds are not allocated in a transparent manner. No one is criticizing this. No one is showing solidarity against this. Yes, maybe because of the conditions you may decide not to apply, but at the end of the day it's our money and it should be transparently accessible by the people, those funds. Unfortunately, the culture of this government, the state, is as such. This is the mentality of state we have in our country. The state collects taxes, generates income for itself, and it never ever discloses where they spend the money. That's why we have mistrust in the state, in the government, including me. Many people don't trust the government. If the government has this kind of mentality, maybe many civil society organizations are also mimicking the government and doing the same thing as them and not attaching importance to transparency. So how can we solve this? First, the civil society needs to embrace transparency, and once they be a part of the governmental positions, for instance, they will also teach the government about the importance of transparency. Unfortunately, as this concept of democracy is not developing in Turkey, I don't think in the short term we will see this possible. I have a youth organization background from TOG and TEGEV. By the way, I'm from Bitlis city. I'm representative of Kamer Foundation. I would like to say that if we didn't get organized as young people, we wouldn't be able to have this struggle as women. So we're strong as women, as young people, and civil society organizations are strong together. I'll be very brief. I just want to say that I agree with what Ibrahim Bey has said. Everything that the civil society is going through has been mentioned very well. We are not transparent even towards one another, not in our workplaces. We think universally and act locally, but we don't know what's happening around us. We as a civil society organizations, we work in projects, we make project applications, we have progress. But for instance, I would like to thank the Hrant Dink Foundation for giving the civil society organizations this opportunity to meet with one another. Because we have this Istanbul Convention issue, a burning issue for all of us. I say Istanbul Convention makes you live, by the way. So all men, women, civil society organizations, we're all together. We are stronger together. I hope we will have transparency. I hope we will not work and act as the government does, because transparency is a reality for civil society. And thank you so much, and I hope I'll get to know you better. And these are the things that came to my mind, and I have limited period of time, so thank you.